quality over quantity is definitely the way you want to go.
Yes, and that's a major shift for Google to think of it like a human now.
Well, and it's interesting too. I don't know if you use Yoast, but
Yes.
in Yoast about a week ago, it now says, it used to say that the minimum word count for a blog post was 300, and now it's 900.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
That was about a week ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're getting with the times.
Getting with the times, right.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I saw a post on Neil Patel. You know, he writes really good content. And in this post, the very last sentence was that he never writes a blog under 2,000 words. I was like, wow.
It takes a really long time. I wrote a blog post earlier this week. It was like 2,500 words, and it took a really long time.
Right? Those take forever.
Forever.
Hello and welcome to the Write Podcast, your source for inspiration in copywriting and content marketing. Listen in as I interview experts in the field and share entrepreneurial stories along with practical content marketing and writing advice, all to impact your life and habits as a content marketer. Welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 27 in the Write Podcast. Today, I'm so honored to have Gini Dietrich with me. She's the author of Spin Sucks and the founder and CEO of Arment Dietrich, a Chicago-based integrated marketing communications firm. So, Gini, I'm so excited to have you here talking with me on the subject of domain authority today.
Well, when you sent over the note with the topic, I was like, oh, I could talk about this all day. That
is great. So before we jump into the topic, I just want to ask you a little bit about your background and your story of getting into online marketing, and you're PR focused. Is that right?
We are. I sort of quote unquote grew up in the big global PR firm world. I went out on my own 12 years ago. And part of the reason, I tell this story a lot, but part of the reason is because Ocean Spray was one of our largest clients. I think they spent, between $6 and $8 million a year in PR. And I remember sitting in the conference room, the executive conference room at the PR firm. You know, it's wood paneled and it's fancy and it was in Kansas City. It overlooked the plaza. Like it was very, very fancy. And we're all in our suits and we're ready to do our dog and pony show. And the client comes in and we go through the whole thing. You know, here are the results for the year. We did this and this and this. And here we've got these, we had like 6 3-inch binders full of clips. Here are all the clips and everything. And, stories galore and everybody's aware and blah, 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 blah. And at the end of it, I'll never forget, the chief marketing officer said, "This is fantastic. And from a PR perspective, you guys hit it out of the park. But cranberry juice sales are down. Growers are not joining the co-op. It hasn't helped." And I remember thinking,
wow.
What? And so because, you couldn't really translate all of that work into actual revenue. And I knew at that point that there had to be a change. And so that was sort of the catalyst for me to go, okay, how are we going to do this? And so then I went to an ad agency from there to build the PR department for them. They didn't have a PR department yet. And as part of that, I started testing these theories. Can we actually measure? And, what kinds of things are we looking at? And then, of course, when I started my own business, brought that in. But it wasn't really until, social media and content marketing and digital marketing all sort of took place, 10 years ago that I was able to go, now we have data that we can actually prove results. And so that's how I got into the online stuff.
Interesting. I love that progression, even though that must have been a hard hit to hear that from the client.
Oh, so deflating, because we had done things like we had created a fake cranberry bog in Times Square, because when they harvest cranberries, they flood the fields and then the berries come off of the branches and float to the top. And so you have these fields full of just red fields, essentially, and it's just full of water and cranberries. It's absolutely stunning. So we had created a fake bog in Times Square, and we did the Art of the Ocean Spray Harvest, where we had a traveling photo exhibit. And I mean, it was it was the best PR, some of the best PR I've ever done.
Wow.
And it did nothing for the organization.
That sounds impressive. Yeah. That is crazy.
I know. So it was pretty deflating.
But that's awesome how you got into online marketing and you saw the opportunity for results and data. I love that.
Yeah, I'm most communicators don't like math and so they don't like numbers, but I freaking love it. I also have a statistics minor.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm like, give it to me, give me the data. Yeah.
That is great. So I came across a recent blog where you talked about domain authority to shift gears into our topic. And I love everything you said about that topic. So to start out, maybe give us a brief definition of what domain authority is. So how does that work and how does that impact someone that owns a domain?
Sure. So it's interesting because we're kind of in this conundrum right now. It's a Moz created metric that takes the authority of your website and it puts a number against it. And so it's based on, what Google sees, your search engine optimization, your content marketing and all that. And so they have an index that I think they update maybe every 10 to 14 days. And it's pretty closely related to the kinds of results that you'll see on Google. So that, obviously they're not working directly with Google, but they're able to take some of that API and create this index. So what it does is it says, okay, based on, number of links that come to your site and the kinds of content that you're creating and the value that you're providing and the social shares and all of that, we're going to give you a number between 1 and 100. So, for instance, FinSucks, I think we're at 64, 65.
Wow, that's good.
So to give you and to put that in perspective, the New York Times is 100. So we're still not the New York Times, but most organizations fall in between 20 and 40, particularly if they're not a content-driven organization. So like a B2B organization or Kellogg's or something like that. They tend to fall in that 20 to 40 range, which gives you a good sense. So if you're in that 20 to 40 range, you're probably doing fairly well. And what that allows you to do is say, okay, if we want to create content that comes up on the first page of Google results, which is what we want because that's what people look, right? Hardly anybody ever goes to the second page. If we want to do that, we have to actually create content that we can compete with on the first page of Google results. So for instance, if I wanted to create content around online courses, I would go and I would Google online courses and I would look to see what is the domain authority of every single site on that first page of Google results. If everything is 80 or higher, I'm not going to be able to create content around online courses and actually get on the first page of Google results. So it helps you get really smart about your keywords. So I would say, okay, maybe I extend that to public relations online courses or PR online courses. So I start to create a longer phrase for my keyword, and then I create content around that. So that's what it does is it gives you a nice little metric. Now, the conundrum that we're in is that the true SEO guys are like, well, it doesn't really mean anything, which from an SEO perspective, it doesn't. But from a content marketing perspective and that what I'll call on-page SEO, the kinds of stuff that you can actually see, not the behind-the-scenes stuff, it gives you a nice place to start and it gives you something to work against. So you can actually say, okay, we have a goal of increasing our domain authority from 24 to 30 this year. And here's how we're going to do it.
Oh, that's great. That is an excellent explanation. So tell us a little bit more about how content matters so much to increasing that metric.
Well, it's all about, value, right? So if you're writing just for the spiders, then you're not going to have the same results because Google's getting really smart to that. So if you're providing real value to your readers, to anybody who would come to your website, to your prospects, to your customers, then Google's going to rank you high on that. And Andy Crestodina, who's actually here in Chicago, but a content marketing expert, says if you create the most relevant page on the internet for your topic, you will be able to increase your SEO, your domain authority, all of those metrics. So that's what you want to be thinking about is not, going out and saying, okay, I'm going to write 3 blog posts this week and they're going to be all how-to lists, but how do I create one really good blog post or one really good video or one really good podcast that I can then expand and it becomes the most relevant page on the internet on that topic. And those are the kinds of things that are going to increase all of those pieces. I mean, yeah, you can have your SEO guys doing the meta descriptions and all of that kind of stuff, and that for sure helps. But the content is what's going to increase it and keep you there.
Yes, so true. That is 100% the truth. And I love what you said about, pouring so much effort into one piece as opposed to spreading yourself out across a quantity. And we've seen so much better results, for our clients and ourselves when we take that approach and try to create the most comprehensive and the most relevant answer to that keyword phrase or that question that people are asking.
Right. Yeah, quality over quantity is definitely the place.
Yes, and that's a major shift for Google to think of it like a human now, and they have been, for a few years. That is great.
Well, and it's interesting too. I don't know if you use Yoast, but
yes.
In Yoast about a week ago, it used to say that the minimum word count for a blog post was 300, and now it's 900.
Oh wow. I didn't see that.
That was about a week ago. That changed.
They're getting with the times.
So getting with the times is right.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I saw a post on Neil Patel. He writes really good content. And in this post, the very last sentence was that he never writes a blog under 2,000 words. And I was like, wow.
It takes a really long time. I wrote a blog post earlier this week that was like 2,500 words, and it took a really long time.
Those take forever.
Yeah, forever.
Well, we connected over the post I wrote on Search Engine Journal for International Women's Day in March, the 50 Women in Marketing, and that post, I think it came in around 3,000 words, but the research and putting together the list and then, writing original bios for each of the ladies, that took me over a month. So about a month and a half.
I'm sure it did.
And I had to tie to the holidays. So I had to start at, the first of the year. Crazy how much work.
And the forethought that takes.
Right.
I mean, you have to actually think about that. You can't just sit down today and say, I'm going to write this for International Women's Day.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You cannot do that anymore.
No.
Used to work somewhat, but doesn't fly anymore.
Right. I used to go, this happened in the news today. I'll write about that tomorrow. We can't do that
That's
anymore.
so funny. Wow. It just shows the major shift of what it takes to create great content anymore.
Well, and I think too that people will get, we have so much coming at us that the information overload is ridiculous. Yes. So if you want somebody to actually pay attention and stay on your site, it has to be really good, really relevant content.
That's so true. That's like hitting the nail on the head with what it takes to create content that raises your domain authority, but that's so hard to grasp, because it's a simple concept and it's like, wait, am I thinking too simple?
Right.
Isn't there a trick involved?
Wait a second. That's all there is. You're right.
But that is so important. And, like one of my goals as a content marketer is to teach that. And it seems like you cannot say that enough and get that point across enough because it's so important to this industry to create that type of content and approach it like, okay, how do I be the best on this topic instead of how do I add this blog post to my website for next week?
Right. Well, and I think too that, we're all busy.
True.
Right? So, and it does take a lot of forethought and some strategic oversight and, research and time. And so when you know that you have to get something out and you're crunched, it's a heck of a lot easier to do 10 ways to increase your SEO and then just write a bullet point, right?
Right.
It's much easier to do that. But that's not the kind of stuff that's going to work anymore.
That is so true. So one other point to address, probably our last topic on this subject is the fluctuation of domain authority. So,
right.
It can go up and down and that can freak marketers out. So how are some ways to understand that fluctuation and what that means?
Okay. Well, first of all, do not panic because everybody freaks out. And then there's all this like, oh my gosh, my domain authority dropped by 2 points. Don't panic. Don't panic. A couple of things happen. Number one, like I mentioned, Moz updates their index every couple of weeks. So if your domain authority drops it's probably related to a Google algorithmic change. So Google's changing all the time, right? And so what you want to do is benchmark where you are right now. So if you are at 32 right now, you write that down, write down the date, and then look to see what your competition is too. So you'll say, okay, competitor A is at 48, competitor B is at 46, competitor C is at 22, and competitor D is at 12. Now what you do is when you drop from 32 to 30, did everybody else drop too? If they did, that's indicative of an algorithmic change, and it's going to stabilize itself. If, however, nobody else dropped and you did, you want to pay really close attention for the next 30 days to see if you come back up or if they drop. Because if you don't come back up or they don't drop, then there's probably something that you need to be paying attention to. And then you can go in and go, okay, I actually use SEM Rush for this. I think it's $99 a month, something like that. It's worth every single penny. But I'll go in and see, okay, are there bad links in content, or sometimes you get spammy links, or maybe you have a guest contributor who snuck in a link that you missed. So there are things that it'll point out that say, okay, this is the reason you've dropped. But typically the reason that it fluctuates like that is because there's been an algorithm change.
So is that true of like 80% of the cases you've seen?
I'd say even higher. I'd say 95%.
Wow. Well, that's really reassuring.
Yeah. Do not panic. Do not panic.
So that metric, that can be found with the free version of the Moz toolbar. Is that right?
It can. Yep. So, the way that you want to do it is it's called the SEO toolbar. So you just go into Moz. I'm trying to think if you have to have a free account or if you can just download. I think you can just download it. It's a Chrome extension. And then what you do is when you do your Google search, so I'll go back to my online course example. So I go into Google and I do online course. I want to toggle on the Moz toolbar in my Chrome extension bookmark page at the top of my navigation. Toggle that on. And then when I do the Google search, underneath each result, it has a black bar, and it has PA, which is your page authority, which you can ignore for this purpose. And then it has DA, which is their domain authority. So then on that first page of Google results, you'll see the domain authority for every single website that shows up on that first page.
Thank you for running through that explanation.
Yeah, I love it. I use it. I used it like 6 times this morning already.
That's awesome.
It just gives you, content marketing, communications, all this stuff that we're doing is, as I indicated, is really difficult to measure. And it just gives you, it's not the end all be all. It's not the only thing that you should measure, but it's definitely a metric that you can say, okay, we're increasing the authority of our website, and here's how we've done it.
That is so true. You can point to an actual number and data.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Data is good.
That should be your tagline.
Data is good. It's like Mitch Joel when when he published Control-Alt-Delete, his big thing was have sex with big data.
Oh.
Same thing. Data is good.
Well, thank you so much for sharing on this topic, Gini, and adding so much intelligence to this topic and sharing, what domain authority means for marketers.
It is my pleasure. And it's definitely something that every content marketer should pay attention to. Also pay attention to what your competitors are doing too, because it'll give you a nice understanding of what's going on in the SEO world.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gini.
Thank you.
I hope that you enjoyed today's Right podcast episode with the amazing Gini Dietrich. You can go follow her on Twitter at Gini Dietrich and follow her company at Spin Sucks. And if you haven't heard, my new book, Practical Content Strategy and Marketing, is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iBooks. This book is the result of over 1,000 hours of compiling the Practical Content Strategy certification course, which the book goes with. So I basically spent my whole year creating a guide for newcomers to this industry, helping them find their way in high ROI content marketing and strategy. So if you're interested and you need help in that area, go to Amazon and grab a copy of my new book. It just hit the best-selling charts, which I'm so excited about. Thank you to everyone who has purchased it and is reading it. I hope you get so much good from it. And don't forget, if you enjoy the Right Podcast, be sure to subscribe on iTunes. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode.